Chapter 9 Searching for Reason. Morning brings with it the light of sensibility. A mother with a family and business responsibilities isn't able to fly off on a whim. If anything makes that perfectly clear, it's little Talia stumbling around and giggling as she tries her best to hold on to CB. A laughing child makes a home immeasurably brighter. Erik will receive my letter while in the hole. That is just fate. All I can do is hope he understands. I spent the next couple of weeks in a mild funk, making plans to relocate to Georgia. I need to find someone to take a greater role managing the club. I've contacted an agent in the hope of selling my personal home. I still own several homes Chuck was in the process of renovating. These need to be sold. The lawsuits will work themselves out. I spent part of my day sifting through memories, old letters, pictures, gifts, the things born of a long marriage. Many of Chuck's things have gone to his brother, but other items are pieces of Chuck's, too personal to let go. I will preserve them for Talia. I spent each evening with her tucked in my arms. We eat together, and although she sleeps in her own bed, I am close by. My life has become tightly wrapped around her. While combing through the treasures of our past, I keep asking myself the same question. How could Chuck have left her behind? I understand him leaving, but to leave Talia? The pain must have been so great that he couldn't bear it. I hold classes at my athletic club for people who had lost a loved one due to suicide. The walking wounded, I called them. The one analogy I come up with is that a person who takes his life must feel like he is in a burning building and there is no way out. Panic and fear from all directions coming at them, without no relief in sight. One day, I decide to seek out the answer. I often reflect on my years as a child when, while asleep, I would fly through the house with spirits. As an adult, I was taught to believe these experiences were weird, and I learned to quietly dismiss them. Children are allowed to be fanciful, but adults must be logical and practical. Since Chuck's death, many of my cultural taboos have been shattered. I have returned to examine the experiences of my childhood. The memories I've revisited are the kind of unusual experiences most people omit when recapping their life. Riding through the hallways with spirits isn't exactly something you bring up at a PTA meeting. People tend to treat the discussion of these topics with smiles of enthusiastic nods and high pitched exclamations along the lines of, "Oh, really? That's so interesting." While in the back of their minds, they're thinking, "Oh my lord, she's actually sitting next to me. Just don't make any sudden movements." It's odd, really. So many of us who are religious or who claim to believe in God never consider that the spirit world may be an actual place. Most view heaven in an abstract sense as somewhere up there. My experiences tell me otherwise. In my discussions with Erik, I've even learned that science is now suggesting that there are 7 higher dimensions beyond ours, just as the ancients, both Christians and Hindus, have claimed that there are 7 heavens or planes. I don't know what the spirit world is, but I do believe that each of us in our own way is a beautiful being of spiritual light, and that the spirit world is our true home. My intuition tells me that my forays as a child were real, that I traveled out of my body as I slept, and that I spoke to these spirit guides. I also believe that heaven is a vast region of many dimensions, the nearest of which is all around us, literally inches away. It is the realm of the angels. I can't say I have always believed this. I was raised Catholic. Not that being Catholic prohibits such a belief. My birth mother, Robin, an avid meta-philosopher, pointed out to me that St. Paul wrote in Corinthians chapter 12 about knowing a man who had an out-of-body experience. In fact, so many people have now reported having experienced these themselves, especially in hospitals and on operation tables, that the phenomenon is gaining wide cultural acceptance. I truly believe that all of us communicate with spirits, usually on an unconscious level or through dreams. Aren't we all intuitive, after all? To varying degrees, we all pick up impressions or feelings about people or situations we can't rationally explain. We say, "Something is wrong here," or "This place is creepy," or "I can't explain it, I just feel a connection with him," or even, "For some reason, I'm getting some bad vibes." Is this our instinct at work? Surely, but it also could be something more. At some point, while teary-eyed and shuffling through the empty halls of my home, I strike up the idea of going to see a psychic medium. I realize it's a ridiculous idea, bolstering the general perception that the woman who corresponds with Erik Menendez is indeed a crackpot. For those who are looking to dismiss me, I suspect this latest decision will supply the ammunition. But I'm not afraid to explore possibilities. A medium is someone who can communicate with souls of people whose physical bodies have passed. And like many women, widowed, too young, I want to know why my husband left. Virtually everyone is skeptical of psychic mediums to some extent. There are too many frauds and too many illusions. With a psychic medium, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe that's why this is going to be so fun. Echo is an elegant middle aged woman with an eager smile and a nurturing, sociable personality. She is highly respected and the author of several books. She doesn't have time for skeptics and she pays them little attention. It's the kind of behavior I would expect from somebody who has authentic abilities. After all, if you were able to communicate with spirits, would you pay much attention to those who claimed you couldn't? When I meet Echo, she is full of energy and eager to help me tune into Chuck. Her approach is not one that pulls information out of me with suggestive questions. She simply goes to work. She tells me that Chuck's soul knew 5 days in advance that he was going to kill himself, though Chuck himself did not consciously know it. She said that Chuck was thrust out of his body so quickly that his soul was shocked. He spent the next 6 to 7 months, by our standards, asleep. He woke in a hospital and was in and out of spiritual consciousness. She said that when he would awaken, he would realize that he had crossed over, but he didn't want to face that reality yet, and he would go back to sleep. She told me there was a man at Chuck's side, a friend. Something to do with a racetrack and car racing, she said. I just looked at her, trying to figure out who this could be. Racing cars? Yes, I keep seeing this friend with him. He has been by his side most of the time. He's trying to help him with the soul transition. That man has something to do with racing cars. Car racing is associated here. I shook my head. I have no idea. I thought she must really be mistaken. Chuck never went near a racetrack. There was only a couple of Chuck's friends and relatives that had crossed over, but to my knowledge, none of them raced cars. Perhaps she was just off on that one point, I thought, a little disappointed. When I asked how his soul could have known 5 days beforehand, she explained the dynamics of the spirit world and free will versus fate. The gist of what she said is as follows. Our lives are not predetermined. The choices we have sown in the past will be reaped in the future. Souls agree to take on certain hardships in order to learn faster and work off karmic debt. Like the trunk of a tree, we have our primary life path, which immediately after birth is fairly well established. Farther into the future, like a tree with numerous branches, the lines of certainty diminish into probabilities and possibilities. Even when we choose poorly, God brings those things or events into our lives, which we most need to heal and grow. Despite how painful or awful those gifts may appear at the time, a main spirit guide is assigned to every incarnating soul to assist that soul. These are often referred to as guardian angels. Death is only sad for the loved one who remains behind. A soul who has died is something greeted by loved ones and is imbued with a sense of peace and well-being. It is different in the case of suicide, when it may take time for the soul to adjust. Even those who may have failed their life lessons and for it have a level of sorrow are never abandoned and are still surrounded by love, but need more healing time. Every soul is precious. A soul may spend decades between lives engaging in learning before deciding, with the help of older souls, to incarnate again. I believe we decide as a soul what kind of physical body, lessons, hardships, and even certain other souls we may link up with during our life. Again, as with any curriculum, our free will ultimately determines whether we follow that path. But even when we make terrible mistakes, we are not abandoned. New lines develop, which lead us back to our primary path of healing and growth. 5 days before Chuck took his life, his fate line ending in suicide had been set, Echo explained. In other words, once that branch began, all paths led to his death. I listened to her discuss the purpose of life while trying to suspend judgment. I did ask about my friend Erik in prison. She told me that she saw mass transfers occurring at his prison in the next year and that Erik would be among those transferred. I did not want to hear that. She also saw Erik becoming very active in prison-related issues, which will be very meaningful work in his life. She said that there are things he is supposed to do while in prison, and that rather than lay back and waste his years, she sees him becoming very active in the things he believes in. And that was the gist of our conversation. She hadn't told me anything earth-shattering when we reached the end of our session, and there were no epiphanies, but her explanations gave me something to think about. She told me that while Chuck was not my soulmate, he loved me, and that he had been wrestling with tremendous stress and inner turmoil at the time of his death. She accurately described him as a man who hid his troubles within him while maintaining a positive public facade. She told me that his soul was thrust so quickly out of his body that he has a lot of soul healing to do on the other side. I'm not sure what I really expected to hear from her, but as I drive back from Minneapolis with Robin, I am less burdened by Chuck's death. I do believe in life after death, in karmic balance, and in the evolution of the soul. Though some of what she said challenged my perspective, I have no doubt that Chuck was under stress or inner turmoil. Isn't that the kind of thing everyone would suspect? Who knew if that stuff about Erik would prove true? He doesn't seem like the kind of person who will waste his life while in prison. As to whether Echo truly communicated with Chuck's spirit, I have no way of knowing. She seemed genuine and certain of herself, but in the end, the earth did not shake. I returned to my quiet home and to the weight of its emptiness and silence. I walk around the half-packed boxes and tiny treasures that are in my family room. I pine for that now lost days when my life was carefree. I lift Talia into my arms and feel her tiny warm body coo against mine. This precious little girl is what's real to me now, not the whispered voices of those who have returned home to the spirit world. Only her life and my ability to fill it with all the love I have left within me. Thank God for you, sweet Talia. You showed up in the nick of time. She bounces in my arms and giggles. She smiles at me. She is my little candle in the darkness. A response to the letter I'd written Erik about moving to Georgia is waiting for me in my mailbox. I toss the other mail onto the kitchen counter and open Erik's letter. Dear Tammy, the hole is really its own kind of prison, but I miss you here just as much as I would anywhere else. I'll know on the 12th if I'll be kept in the hole. I hope I'll be out by the time I see you again. Even from 2,000 miles away, I can still feel your touch. I miss your smile, your laugh, your tender kiss, and your knowing, loving eyes. I miss all the little things about you, all the things you try to hide. There's a whole world to discover in you. I know you have a difficult decision to make. From the letter I received today, it appears you've already made it. How quickly joy can turn to sorrow. The pages are still stained with your tears. They lay beside me, unfolded, on my desk. Georgia made a powerful impression on you. I read the brochure you sent. It sounds wonderful, but I feel the sadness in you. My Tammy, I am not the noblest man in the world. I want to be. But in moments like these, I am no good at it. I should tell you that you're making the right decision, that Georgia will be a nice home for you. It will certainly be a more beautiful place with you there. I should tell you these things, and so I will. All I want is for you to be happy. You deserve happiness more than anyone I know. But at the same time, a part of me wants to scream out for you, to let me make this decision for you. I want to be your love. I want to walk beside you and hold you through the years. I want you to see the magic of us the way I do. But how can I give that to you? And when is it even right to make this decision for another? So instead, I can only watch the steel gray clouds out my window. Folsom is darker, quieter, and far lonelier without you tonight. My soul is emptier. Rain is falling. Rhythmless taps against my window. The beat of solitude. I know you feel it too. You are brave and strong, and I love you all the more for it. My heart is not nearly so strong. I miss you in 10,000 ways. I love you, Tammy. No matter where you go, I will be here loving you. That is something that no law, no circumstance, no sentence, no distance, no wall will ever be able to change. I read his words and cried slow, hot tears. I am not the brave woman he believes me to be, nor am I at all sure my decision is best. I wish he'd be angry. I wish he'd tell me I'm a fool, but that simply isn't Erik's way. I read his words again and again. I cry for him, for us, and because sadness and love is now so familiar to me. It crushes me to see him locked in that terrible place, now beaten up in the hole, trying to be strong for me. I know he'll be moved in handcuffs and leg chains. He makes light of these things, but how does the mind cope with that reality? I know how my mind copes. I'm miserable. I just wish I was more certain that Georgia is the right place for me. Erik is released from the hole on November 12th. He calls me the next day. It turns out that so many prisoners were grumbling about the guard's assault on him that the captain asked for an internal review. Erik was quickly and quietly released. His injuries are healing. No bones were cracked. The left side of his face, where the guards repeatedly struck him, will probably scar. He is simply glad to be out of the hole and isn't eager to stir up more problems with the very guards who operate the prison. Prisoners have a tendency to find themselves shot, set up, or permanently disabled, he says to me. Sometimes it's necessary, but this incident isn't worth it. He says these things with an air of detachment, but I know they frighten him. I say to him, "Don't think you're getting out of this that easily. You scared me. We'll be talking about this when I see you over Thanksgiving, that's for sure. He chuckles. You're the least frightening thing in my life, Tammy. Give me some time. I can see him smiling in my mind. Now let's talk about us and Georgia. He is suddenly quiet. I'd rather wait. I sent you another long letter about it. My heart quickens. What's in the letter? Silence. I'm not reading the letter, I tell him. Tammy, he says, soft voice. He sounds despairing, deflated, as if he is reaching into an empty well to find words. I love you. I like saying the words because it makes me feel good to hear them. But let's be honest, we're going to be miserable without each other when you're in Georgia. What are you saying? I'm saying, do you love me? I know the answer, but it is strange to hear myself say the words. Yes, I do. Then don't you see you're going to be miserable in Georgia? Not because Georgia isn't a nice place, it may be, but I'm here and we're going to miss each other, whether you know it or not. Your heart must know it. And suddenly the words pour out of him like water through a breaking dam. He compares us to the two injured birds that need each other to heal. He talks about the future, how uncertain his life is, but how he's willing to take that chance if I am. When I'm with you, Tammy, I feel utterly at peace, complete. I know that's what everybody says when they're in love, but it's really true. This isn't infatuation. You and I have been friends for a long time. We're going to be the best of friends. It's so obvious to me. Yes, a part of me wants to beg you to move out here, but the other part of me wants you to want that. That's why I've been holding back. It's a good thing he can't see me because my eyes are tearing. Welcome to a relationship, Erik. This is what happens in one. You make decisions together. My call waiting line beeps. It's Lisa. I ask her to hold. I'm just hanging up from Erik. Oh, really? She quips. She knows that since Chuck's death, I've been in mourning, unable to get excited about a man. Erik and I say a slow goodbye. He misses me and doesn't want the call to end. He tells me 3 times, and then the call is terminated. This is story of my life. I've also found a beautiful place in a quiet neighborhood, about 40 minutes away from Erik's prison. I'm leaning towards California, and I am hoping my weekend with him will make the decision clear. So far, I have focused mainly on Erik's good qualities. Like most women, I am attracted to the potential in a man. Erik reminds me of a roughly cut diamond. He shimmers with an inner light, but he is far from polished. In fact, he needs a lot of work. Because of everything that he has been through in his short life, there is something unique about Erik. He has this natural inclination for tenderness and romance. His biggest problem is that his parents provided him with a horrible model for a relationship. Propriety on the surface, but private violence and emotional abuse behind closed doors. Yet even his parents were a product of their own upbringings. Erik's mother had watched her father beat her mother. These were not uneducated or poor people who are easy to stereotype. They were well educated and well heeled. They lived in a world where brutality and domestic abuse is not supposed to happen. But family violence is America's darkest shadow, and it doesn't discriminate between social classes. For his part, Erik is never aggressive with me. I have no fear of him. He is probably the gentlest person I have ever known. If I told you half the stories about him, you probably wouldn't believe me. Having taken life, Erik now refuses to harm any life. One day, I almost stepped on a bug in the visiting room. Erik made sure to prod the little bug along and hurry it out of the path of visitors. He is gentle, and I don't worry about his temper. I am worried, instead, that he will destroy us in more subtle ways. When I arrive at visiting today, Erik is nowhere to be found. I receive our table assignment from the desk officer and wait at our table. Within 10 minutes, my legs and arms are crossed. I pride myself on punctuality. I think a person who is late all the time is rude and narcissistic. Erik, on the other hand, grew up waiting. He would wait as much as 2 to 3 hours in the darkness after swimming or some other sport practice for his mother to arrive. Not occasionally, but most of the time. The family was notoriously tardy to family functions. Their version of catching a plane was to swing up to the curb at the last minute, check the bags, and literally sprint to the gate. Just a minute in the Menendez house meant within 2 hours. So I shouldn't really be surprised that I'm sitting at a table with my legs and arms crossed. There is a very nice officer that works in visiting who knows when I get angsty. And he always comes over to calm me down. He jokes with me and makes me laugh. He makes fun of Erik when he finally arrives. It's not that Erik is tardy on purpose. He simply doesn't plan for delays. When there's a fight on the yard or the gate officer at a checkpoint, Erik's needs to pass isn't around. He arrives late, like today. Erik's head pops out from behind the cracked door. He is still fastening the last of his shirt buttons. A smile brightens his face when he sees me. He hops down the stairs, turns in his ID, and rushes over to me. He is excited and has been ever since I told him I'm leaning towards moving to Sacramento. Infectious energy courses through him. His arms are wide open, waiting for me to stand and hug him. I stay seated. I don't smile. What's wrong, he says. I explain that I get up at 5 a.m. to visit him and he can at least be here on time. I remind him that he's an adult, that being behind bars doesn't absolve him of responsibilities to others. Eric's eyes widen and his shoulders sag. If he were a dog, his ears would have dropped. He lowers himself beside me, looks me in the eyes, and matter-of-factly says, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I should have been here ahead of you. If only he'd have stopped there, but as men love to do, he has to throw in his excuse. I intended to be here before you, but everything went wrong. Then he tells me about everything that went wrong. So what you're saying is I don't have a right to be upset at you because you had to battle the universe to get to me? He frowns, mulling this over. Then he decides that he's not saying that. You're right, he says. He takes my hand, kisses it. I'd be angry too. I'm a jerk for not being here on time. There's no other way to look at it. He does get it, so I relent. It's not always that I will, but I've missed him more than he knows, and more than I will tell him. His eyes twinkle like sapphires when he smiles. Before we get carried away recapping the week's events, I want to get some food in him. We wait in line next to a couple at the frozen food machine. He moves to hold me from behind, but I slip away from him. We hold hands. We discuss the possibilities of a move out to California. When I'm with Erik, the choice seems so obvious. We eat lunch and then walk hand in hand around the room. I ask him what the guys in prison are like. He shrugs. People are people. It's easy to think of all prisoners as monsters and not care about what happens to them. But I live with these guys. Most are simply lost. They're bright, but uneducated and afraid. Yeah, afraid. Society's scary as prison to them. They've failed and they've known it. The thing is, I find really strange is that most prisoners don't even want to hurt people. They certainly don't sit around and glorify their crimes. Mostly, they keep quiet about it, ashamed. But the violence. Prison gangs were created for protection. I think they were originally a lot like a union, but it wasn't long before they were controlled by very violent men. Most prisoners are dominated by a small percentage of truly dangerous men. Prison is a feeding ground for their hate and their hopelessness. But most prisoners aren't bad people. In fact, a lot are here because they were addicted to drugs. How many people in prison get visitors? Not many. Most will go 10 years without a visit, and during the time, their whole world is their prison. Just despair and violence, suicide, drugs. These are ways prisoners escape the unbearable pain. It's pretty sad. 10 years without a hug or an I love you, the thought sends shivers up my spine. Erik feels me tremble. He caresses my hand. I ask, did you ever get your book back? No, Scotty's working on it. To be honest, it doesn't matter to me. You got into a fight over it. You sound upset. Yes, I'm upset. When I heard you were beating up, I panicked. I'm sorry, I know you were worried. I didn't get into a fight over the book. We fought because he punched me in front of 50 people. I couldn't just walk away. Why not? You're apparently not good at fighting. I'm venting and being unfair. But Erik only grins. I wasn't awful. You lost. I lost because the guard helped him out. You could have been killed. He's got that silly smirk on his face. Tammy, this is prison. Everyone gets beaten up. But if I let prisoners walk over me, worse will happen. I take his hand. Erik, you're an intelligent guy. Try to keep to yourself more. You'll be safer. Stay away from situations with any unreasonable people. There's a light inside Erik that he doesn't really see. He bought into the lies spoken about him, but that light shines in the way he treats people with tenderness, in the way he is kind and courteous to visitors around him. It's like he has this secret, charming soul that was obscured during some dark years in his youth. I'm a woman, so I like the thought that I could reawaken that in him. In the end, my heart would not let me move to Georgia. I didn't know what sort of future I'd have with Erik. Most relationships, after all, don't last long. But I knew I couldn't simply walk away. In this enigmatic man, I found an opportunity for real love. I'd have to follow this strange path and see it through. Certainly, there were a host of other reasons that could have drawn me to California. It's a beautiful state with lots of opportunity. I reasoned that even if my emerging relationship with Erik should not succeed, I could create a life for myself there. But the truth of it could not be denied. Erik was in California. The sun sets into the horizon of the western states, transforming the sky from baby blue to fuchsia. The headlights cut through the gathering darkness. I can only see a short distance onto the path ahead. Farther up the road, small lights twinkle, the promises of things to come. There are dark spaces too, vast areas with unknown and frightening possibilities. This is the path my soul is guiding me along. I keep my head from bowing, but fear swims through the chambers of my heart. This path will not be easy. A ship is safe in harbor, John Shedd once said, but that's not what ships are for. There are so many heartbreaks in the city I leave behind. I wonder if I'm running away. I wonder if I have been driven away, or maybe neither. Maybe the pain lets us know when it is time to be brave and face change. This is my time. Still, I will miss Minnesota, one of the beautiful treasures of Earth. I will miss my childhood friends, my family, and home. Almost everything I have ever loved is there. On the night I raced towards a new adventure to find new love and new forms of sorrow and joy. There's the story of an Indian squaw who loved the evening sky. One night she asked her father, "Will the stars shine forever?" Her father, one of the wise elders of the tribe, simply said, "I don't know, but it seems to me that nothing in this world lasts forever." "Then what will happen to the stars?" she asked. "When they have given all they can give here, they will journey to another world and offer their light once again." She was pleased with this answer. Just like us, Papa, just like all of us.